but I can get you one. Preference on color?
No, I don't care what it is. I just check my agenda. Hello, Ms. Warren. I'm wonderful. It's always good to see you. I love it. You know? Seriously. Michael will be here. He broke his shoulder. Falling down the courthouse. No kidding. Yeah. Hey. Yeah. So we have to like have something like this shoulder like reset or something like that. Yeah. So. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
is a little bit after 6 o'clock this evening. We'll call to order this evening's City Council meeting. And as always, I'd ask that we would all rise, and I will lead us in an invocation. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to come together tonight as the Murphysboro City Council. We pray for each and every one of the residents of our community that they will be safe and sound, and that our families and our futures would be the same. We thank you very much for the service of all of the city staff and employees. We know how important their work is every day to continue to bringing together of this community. We pray that the decisions we make tonight will honor your name. We pray these in your holy name. Amen. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Hunsaker, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Hughes. Here. Alderman Curry-Witzman. Alderman Brown.
Here.
Alderman Pearson.
Here.
Alderman McComb.
Here.
Alderman Urbis.
Here.
Alderman Bratton.
Here.
Alderman Bastian. Alderman Campos. Here. Alderman Pittman.
Here.
Mayor Stevens.
Here. I would just pass along that I talked to Alderman Bastian today, and he had to have some medical issues, surgery on his shoulder after a recent injury, and so we are thinking about him and praying for him that he would have a speedy and full recovery. With that being said, we get into our agenda items for this evening. We have something here at the start of our agenda tonight, which is particularly special. We have the opportunity to pin a sergeant, and that being Mr. Aaron Webb. And at this time, I would like to have Chief Ellenmeyer come up to the podium, and I'm going to join him shortly afterward for a short ceremony while Chief Ellenmeyer talks about this promotion, and we will read him his oath. Chief?
Yes, several months ago, Sergeant Jacob Weber took a position with Illinois State Police, so we had a vacancy as a sergeant. We didn't have an active list. I requested the Fire Police Commission Board to administer a sergeant test, which they did on August 1st. And after the results, it yielded that Officer Aaron Webb was #1 overall in the ranking. Officer Webb is a 7-year employee plus of the Murphysboro Police Department. He's a 14-year employee of the Army National Guard, which he's still active. He's here tonight with his wife Angela and their 2 little young men. If you guys would step forward.
And at this time, I'm going to read the oath of office for Police Sergeant to Officer Aaron Webb. And if you would, please raise your hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Aaron G. Webb,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
that I will faithfully discharge the duties
that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Police Sergeant
of the office of Police Sergeant
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Thank you very much, Mr. Webb. If you would like to sign that. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll let you take that, Chief. Thank you.
Congratulations.
done that in the past, but I think it is important that as our employees take steps up the chain of command, that it is noted in that kind of public way. I think it is important. With that being said, we'll move into the regular items on our agenda. We have up first the consideration of council minutes from September the 8th, 2020. And I'd entertain any questions or amendments to minutes. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have consideration of accounts payable registers. We have quite a few of them this evening, and we would entertain any questions on the bills at this time. Ms. Campos?
What are we paying to the city of Carbondale in the new, on list number 21 for, 1,249.56? We just got it today.
The city of Carbondale?
Yep. Repairs to the fire truck. Thank you. He said it, I just repeated it. Thank you, sorry, chief.
Mr. Brent?
List number 7, page 2. See there, a Bravo contract for payment of $85,543.94. What, Mr. Sheffer, what does that leave, as far as their contract, and what percentage are they done?
I think this payment from last month. So
Pardon?
This payment is from last month.
That was the payment that was, I believe, held pending the fact that they got all the culverts properly set.
Yeah, and I went in 2 days later and
Right.
left a note for Sandra to notify them and to go ahead and send the check out. So we're not, it's already been approved, correct?
Well, essentially, we have not formally approved it, so that's why
Okay,
it's showing up.
okay, that was my question. I think I've got another one in this other register. I'm just kind of curious. I see there's quite a few land parcels that we've got. Does anybody know how many we like acquiring all of these parcels?
I believe 4 are left.
All right, have they started dealing with Mr. Ellis yet?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have there.
Mr. Pittman?
I just had a question on Register 20 and Register 7. Both registers have a payment for a dump truck loan for the same exact amount. Is that just a matter of splitting it up for accounting purposes, or is that 2 months' payments? Page 3 on Register 20 and page 1 of Register 7.
And what is it titled, WJ? I'm sorry.
First Bank and Trust dump truck loan.
Oh, yeah, $1,392.29. Scott Evans, do you have any insight to share with us there?
I do not. I'll have to check into that.
All right, so do we want to hold those two particular, are they the same check number or different check numbers?
Different dates. One is 9/10 and the other one is 9/16.
I don't necessarily want to hold them if it's payments due, because they're
Yeah.
time sensitive, but
I'll
make sure
find
we
out
just
tomorrow.
pay what's due.
So are you, WJ, I didn't catch all that. Are you saying you don't want to hold up the payment?
Well, yeah, not, if it's payments due, it's time sensitive, so.
Just don't want to pay it twice? All right, well, we'll just trust Mr. Evans to review that and take the appropriate action from Ms. Ridley if there was some kind of duplication made.
I'll make a motion to pay the bills.
I have one question. I got the rest of my questions answered this afternoon by Sandra, but when we got this new one on list 22, it has partial 32 for twenty, page 7, it has that same parcel. I just did not pay that one right.
Just so everybody could hear, you said on list 22,
On 22, the Jerry Wright parcel, and then on 20, page 7, also list parcel 32, the Jerry Wright parcel. So, and they're both the same amount.
Yeah, the one on
And
list
also,
20,
oh, the recovery one also.
that it got put on one vendor so that we got voided and reissued.
That's what you told me today was going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's, it's been straightened out.
okay.
The one on 20 has been voided because it got put on one, right?
One vendor.
Or one vendor, excuse me, so they separated it out on 22.
That was the need for
Yes,
this one.
thank you.
Any other questions on the bills? Entertain a motion to pay the bills with the guidance suggested.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That takes us into our regular standing committee and commission reports. First, we have the Budget and Finance Committee chaired by Mr. W.J. Pittman.
Thank you, Mayor. Under old business, we have update on mobile ranch issues. I'm guessing I can turn that over to Attorney Heller.
I think, update that item largely. I spoke earlier today with Richard Blake. All has been paid up in terms of their licensing fees. And so that license was signed and ready to be issued today. They do owe a current water bill, but I don't believe they are past due. I don't know if they are past due, Catherine?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to speak to how much past due?
I believe it's a little over $1,000 at this point. They're getting ready to get billed again this week.
Okay. So I know that at least the licensing has been paid. Catherine, just so everybody heard it, they owe about $1,000 in past due water bills. Mr. Heller, do you have anything to add to it other than what I've just,
I just have a question, and that is, we did, cite Oval Ranch for ordinance violations, for not having paid those fees and paying those licenses. They have done that now. I think the 25th or 26th is their appearance date, first appearance date on the ordinance violation. Do you want to proceed on those, or do you want those to go?
I don't see any reason to pursue those because we wouldn't have any grounds to stand up in court and try to prosecute them for something that they've already taken care of.
Well, we actually would, because their violation was a violation each day, and
Okay?
so we do still, I mean, it's still a violation, a prosecution, if we wanted to prosecute. The question is, do we want to, or do we want to, we got their attention, and we'll let it stand, that's something else.
Maybe my opinion not to pursue it. I don't know how much we want to spend on pursuing, past, I guess we would be able to try to collect on them for days that they went by without being in compliance. I'm open to other suggestions, Mr. Urbis.
So the $1,000 they owe, is that all they owe now?
Yes.
Is that one of the violations, Ed?
No, the violations are for not having a license.
Okay.
Mr. Pearson?
Will the cost of prosecuting be more than the proceeds we get from the violation?
The prosecution goes, remember, we have an ordinance day, and Ben Reed takes all the ordinance cases, and he's over there in court sometimes 3 or 4 hours, so it's just gonna be, it's not a separate trip to court. It's not a lot of preparation. It's also, not a lot of money to recover. And we could get up to $500 a day, but courts don't very often give full penalties on things like that on an everyday basis. So it's not something we're gonna make money on, it's just a question of, we're not gonna lose money on it, it's a question of, do we want to pursue it, over the line, or do we, are we satisfied that they're at the line now, those things?
So they're good for a year of the license, is that right?
So their next license won't be due until May.
Mr. Pittman?
I mean, it's my opinion that I don't feel that we need to go on with prosecuting. That was kind of what we talked about from the beginning, was we might have to use attorneys to get their attention, and it did. We got the money that we talked about. They've paid a couple water bills since this all started, I believe. I mean, I don't think we should keep hammering if they've been making payments on the water and have caught up their license.
Yeah, I'd rather have them spending money improving the trailer park than fighting us at this point. I think that if we can obviously and we are keeping a very close eye on them as to what transpires there, but I don't know that it'd be a money-making venture. Mr. Heller?
Mayor, I believe it's your prerogative, the mayor, to make that call. I don't think that's something you have to have council approval of, the prosecution, the chief executive officer. You're the one that has the authority to direct this proceeding.
All right, well, the general, Mr. Urbis?
So would, they probably won't appear anyway, right? It'll probably be a default.
Probably. I don't know, because they've got somebody here, maybe they will appear.
I have a question.
Ms. Campos?
Thank you. Do the violations have per se an expiration or time frame where they can be filed in court or no? Because
Statute of limitations?
Statute of limitation, thank you so much. Because another approach could be sending them a letter that we have these violations, that they can possibly go to court, and we can encourage them to keep their payments up to date, so we won't proceed with them. No?
It's a good suggestion.
Just a suggestion.
We can do that, and we can continue it generally and see how they do with getting the water bills paid.
Mr. Urbis?
Well, that's what I was gonna say, could you just continue it for, 30-day next, ask the judge to pass it to the next docket?
We sure can.
Well, then I think that would be the best thing to do, would be to send a letter and ask for a continuation on the next docket. That way we can sort of keep that tool in our tool belt, but not necessarily use it just yet.
We'll send them a letter telling them that we aren't going to proceed at this next call, that we're gonna hold the violation open, and pay the water bills correctly on time, we will pay.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone for your feedback on that.
Thank you.
All right, turn it back over to Mr. Pittman.
All right, thank you. That's the only item under old business. Under new business, we have presentation of financial reports by Scott Evans. Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Alderman Pittman. Okay, I have several reports tonight that I'll go through briefly. Page 1 is basically the cash position of the city there. Page 3 is our income tax receipts, and the amount voucher for this month is $61,228. Much higher than I anticipated, much higher than it's ever been for this month in the past 8 or so years. So that continues to be a pleasant surprise in a year like this. So I would say, projecting forward, we should at least match what we had last year. So that's good to have that tax, because after the sales tax, that's probably the next highest source of revenue for us. So it's important that number is good, and it is. So the 4th page just shows the basically the activities of the general fund through the 8 months. So through 8 months, we've spent $3,318,000 in general fund amongst the different departments, as you see there. And for the same time period, we budgeted $3.7 million. So we're running under budget in expenses. So that's a good thing going towards the end of the year, when we do have more planned expenses towards the latter half of the year. And then our revenues We're $3,571,000. And for the same period, we budgeted 3.7, so we're slightly under there. But again, some of that's backloaded with the property taxes making up a big chunk of that towards the end of the year. So I think we're in pretty good shape. Right now, we've got a surplus of $253,000 in general fund through the 8 months. So I think we're in good shape for any weird things that could happen in the next 3 or 4 months. Let's see. The next 3 pages, I'll just touch on briefly. That's the salary, which is a major component of those expenses. For the month, we actually were $12,000 under budget in salaries across the whole city. Now this includes the water fund too, which wasn't in the general fund stuff. But and also year to date through the 8 months, we're $175,000 under budget. Again, we have one more pay period, I think, that has a 3 payroll month, so it's good to have a cushion going into the future there. And the last report is the healthcare, also an important component to our expense structure. Through 8 months, we have spent $293,403 in general fund on healthcare, and we have spent $62,145 in water sewer, for a total of $355,000 for healthcare. So if you project that out, we would hit somewhere about $533,000 by the end of the year. Maybe slightly more than that when we have the new policy year starting in November. But we should, barring some catastrophe, we should be well under budget in the healthcare costs. So that's a good thing, because that can be an area that can be hard to pinpoint. So it's nice when we have stayed on top of that. So that's all the reports I have. So any questions on that or any other financial issues?
Mr. Harvis? Scott, what's the projection for the healthcare costs for next year?
If you just take the 8 months and project that for 12, that's $533,322. And it's been running the last several months about that same 100,000-ish under budget on the projection. So
I guess I was thinking about the renewal cost for next year. Is that?
yeah, it's going to be very small. I think Jamie Simmons at Diamond Brothers was able to negotiate, I think, was it 2.9%? Excuse me, 2.67%. He did even better than I thought. So that's, and the policy period starts like November 1, so it's not going to have really a lot of time this year to even make a big difference. So
I'm just thinking about what we're looking at for next year.
yeah, so I mean that's going to cover a lot of next year. So that's good to have a certainty of what that's going to be, and not have a 25 or 30% surprise to the bad side or something. So.
Ms. Hughes?
I just have a question with tax, real estate taxes being the second one not being due until November, where usually it would be September, October, whatever. Do you think we will receive the biggest part of that before they enter the fiscal or not?
I think we will, because they're pretty efficient at getting that money out. But wouldn't you say, Sandra?
The tax sale will be pushed back, of course.
Yeah, right. The tax sale would be pushed back probably till February or something like that. But that's usually not a very significant part of the puzzle, usually. So I don't anticipate them having any major delays. So we should get that in December.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help but think about some of the people that have been on this council far beyond before when I was mayor, and everything that they went through whenever it came to difficult budgetary situations in Murphysboro, and the work that Scott Evans and Sandra Ripley and all the department heads have done over the last, say, decade to find us in a situation where we're under budget nearly everywhere, ahead of expectations on revenues. It's I hate to even mention it, because you don't want to, if you want to say more jinx it.
You don't want to jinx it, right?
It really is amazing. It really is. Because we could be in a much different situation, because 90% of other communities in Illinois right now are in a different situation.
Yeah, so far so good.
All right, there's no more questions for Scott. Thank you, Scott.
Yep,
Thank you, Scott.
you bet.
consideration of TIF agreement for 1306 Walnut Street. I believe we should all have that in our packets.
This is just a follow-up from the previous meeting, I believe. Is that right, Sandra?
Yes, we actually have to pass an ordinance now.
All right, so this is an ordinance essentially adopting what we had moved on at the previous meeting.
Move to adopt the ordinance.
Have a motion? Second.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Last item is consideration of release of water customers to Murdale Water District. Talked about that a little last time.
I think that, Tim has information about that.
Mr. Lee, would you like to come to the podium and speak to this issue? Perhaps Ms. Molly as well?
So with, I think Catherine worked on the finance part of this, but what I've thought about today in a conversation with the mayor is that our customers are kind of getting water third party at this point. Because,
If, just get as close to that microphone as you
no,
can.
I'm sorry,
so that
our,
I can hear you.
our customers are almost getting a third party water because Kincaid provides water to Murdale the same way as they do us. So it goes to Murdale, then back to Murphysboro customers. So they're actually getting their water from Murdale. Every year we provide our water customers with a consumer confidence report, basically based on the distribution of how our water, based on like the tolerances and lead content, things like that. But those particular customers wouldn't exactly be getting that information from, they'd be receiving it from us, but they wouldn't be correct in the water that they are consuming. So that is one little hiccup that I kind of thought about today. If you remember, this arrangement was from 1985 because of basically we couldn't provide water to these customers, but they were in near our water district, so Murdale made the water available to them from their main. And we didn't want to lose customers at the time. Now, since 1985, nothing has changed. There's 4 customers. That's exactly what was there in 1985. So there wasn't any growth necessarily in that area. And I'm on the fence on whether we keep these customers or turn them over to Murdale. It really would make me no difference. We're not really going to benefit. We don't benefit a lot by having these customers, and we certainly aren't going to lose a lot if they were to become Murdale customers.
And one thing that I learned after talking to Tim earlier today, we make about $400 a year on these 4 customers. The flip side of that, which Tim just referenced, is that when we issue a boil water order, or whenever they get their water quality report annually, they're paying the city of Murphysboro, but their water's coming from Murdale Water District. So there is a confusion that can be created by the fact that their water's coming from Murdale, but they get a city of Murphysboro bill, and if we issue a boil water order in their neighborhood, they're going to be thinking that may impact them because they pay the city of Murphysboro, but they're not being fed by our infrastructure. So, to me, like Tim said, I'm sort of on the fence. I think that if we let these customers go, I think Catherine figured out that they'd probably see about a $10 a year increase in their bill because Murdale Water District's rates are slightly higher than ours. So there is a confusion aspect that these customers maybe don't even know that they're involved in terms of where their water is coming from. But at the same time, if we let them go, they may see a slight increase in their bill. Ms. Hughes.
The whole thing is always been confusing to me. That $400 a year that we supposedly make, are you also, I mean, you guys are reading their meters also.
Right.
So we're paying someone to read their meters. Is that coming off of that quote's $400? And then someone has to do the accounting to pay, Leslie has to cut a check when we get a bill that, I mean, are we really even making $400 a year on it? Probably not.
We're not.
No. So if we're paying Catherine's department to do something, Tim's department to do something, Leslie, cutting a check to do something, we're not making anything on it. Why make it that confusing when they can just pay a bill straight to Murphy?
Mr. Pearson, did you have something?
No.
Okay, excuse me. Mr. Ernest?
That's my opinion.
So the water they're getting is from Murdale?
Yes.
Right.
Well, just keep in mind that all the source water comes from Kincaid.
Right.
But they're literally distributing it around Murphysboro to Murdale. And then these customers are tapped off of Murdale's water main. But they're near our water district, so they're our customers.
So what would happen now if there was a break and we had to go fix it? It'd be our
Well-
cost, right?
Within a couple 100 feet, we do have a water main. If we were to have a break there, it wouldn't affect these customers. But that's when the confusion would come in. If they may call us for any type of leak or water break, and we would go out and respond, but it wouldn't be ours. I mean, there's a fine line. It's confusion.
So if we turn it over to Murdale, if they had a leak, then Murdale would be responsible for it?
They already are responsible for it, yes. Yeah. We're just billing the customers is all we're doing.
Let's get rid of it.
We're paying, yeah.
Mr. Bratton?
Are we ready for a motion? So I'll make a motion to release these customers to Murdale.
So I would second it.
Fair enough. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, Tim and Catherine, for all that research.
Are we gonna let them know that they're being released?
Well, I would suppose we ought to.
Yeah, probably a good idea.
That is the last item under new business. Is there any public comment under budget and finance?
I would just, Catherine, just to clarify, I assume you didn't hear that last portion, that we do need to notify them, and perhaps Tim maybe needs to do that just with a door knock on those 4 customers.
I'd be glad to go to each house and just tell them about what the plan is and why we decided to make this decision.
That would be good.
And then do we need to let Murdale know that we're doing that also?
Well,
So I talked to Kurt again today,
Okay.
and touched base with him, he said, all we would have to do is just walk away from it, and we talked about January 1st, making it effective. Giving us time to work out all the.
Thank you.
Sounds like we can move out of budget and finance.
thank you, Mr. Pittman. Takes us to Building and Grounds, chaired by Alderman Gary McCollum. Gary?
Thank you, Will. There's no old business, no new business. Is there any public comment on building and ground? Here now, we can move on, Mayor.
I think you run a good committee. That takes us to Community Relations, chaired by Mr. John Urvis.
Thank you, Mayor. We have no old business. We have one topic on new business, discussion regarding trick or treating. I saw today that the CDC just released guidelines for Halloween, basically. If I can let folks know, if you don't know, Halloween will need to be done differently in order to keep people safe. Door-to-door trick-or-treating, indoor haunted houses, costume parties, and trunk-or-treating are among the traditional Halloween activities the CDC has deemed higher risk activities and should be avoided this year. They're suggesting lower risk activities, or moderate, I guess they call it, moderate risk activities, such as small outdoor costume parties, outdoor Halloween movie nights, and this is one thing that kind of struck me as something that might work. Participating in one-way trick-or-treating that includes individually wrapped treats or social distancing. So I'll just throw that out for discussion. Have some other ideas, but see what people think.
I've been getting several messages from people wanting to know what the city's stance on it was, and I had not replied to any of those because I thought that I ought to wait to see what the guidance was. As John said, the CDC is discouraging traditional door-to-door trick-or-treating. I think one thing that I'd like to do is to take advantage of the Dom Building's drive-up window, and perhaps I could be up there and we could just have folks drive through the drive-up window and hand out, candy to kids who wanted to come with their parents through the drive-up window or something. I don't know, we typically have, I think, adopted or made some sort of, but actually, no, I take that back, because the trick-or-treating hours are actually set in city ordinance. They are on Halloween, October the 31st, unless that falls on a Sunday. From, I forget what the hours are, I think like 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. or something.
I think it's 5 to 8. I think it's 5 to 8. or something.
5 to 7 or 8.
5 to 8 p.m.
Yeah, 7, 8.
So I don't know if technically we need to do anything to formally step back from that as it is in city ordinance because of the situation we find ourselves in with coronavirus. Mr. Heller, you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know the good answer. I know in my house, I'm just being as safe as I can. And
Right.
to me, it's the only safe choice right now.
And it's not as if we're going to have the police out looking for, young children that are going door to door. I obviously don't think that's what we're interested in. Mr. Brandt?
According to that, are we still gonna let I know that there's quite a few churches in town that have, on a Sunday or on Halloween, they'll have the parking lot, and that seems to be a pretty good thing. Is that something that they're discouraging, John?
Yes, it is. That's the trunk or treat.
Yeah.
But it seems like, and I guess one of my thoughts was maybe send a letter to the Ministerial Alliance and suggest this one-way trick-or-treating where they could, drive through the parking lots of the churches.
Yeah. I can't help but think, though, that what is the difference between a farmer's market and a trunk or treat in essence? I mean, we have farmers markets that are open all over the state, and I know that those are deemed safe enough. So I don't know if it's just because of a number of children involved, and they are typically asymptomatic and can be highly, spread coronavirus, but.
Well, I think with the trunk or treats, they could be, assembling a lot around.
I would think a drive-through trunk or treat would be actually quite good. I know that Methodist Church usually has a giant big one, but, they hadn't decided if they could or would even pursue that. I talked to Michelle about that just a few days ago. But if they could do a drive-through one, that might be an interesting way to handle this.
Yeah, to me, that would be a very similar activity, just on a little safer.
Would it be worth reaching out to the Park District to see if maybe all of the churches could set up down in Riverside and we could do a drive-through around the circle of Riverside?
Yeah, it's not a bad suggestion.
I think it's a great suggestion.
Yeah, I think it's great.
I personally feel that our kids and all of us are still going through a lot. But kids are very, very resilient. And I think if the city coordinates something like that with the churches at the Riverside Park, one location, and let the kids walk the park. Walk the park with their customs. They don't want to be in a car. And everybody's used to use masks and social distancing. So with the recommendations, and we are outdoors, probably will be something that the city can embrace and do. I just feel like we have to live and we have to let them live somehow.
I think that would be a good idea, but I think we need to stop and realize there's a lot of these kids out there, their parents know they're going trick-or-treating, but have no idea where they're at, and they're walking. And there's some little kids with the older kids too, so if we did that, you could set up half there and half maybe in town on a parking lot or whatever, at the city office or whatever you want to do, but there are a lot of young kids that are walking by themselves, and maybe 11 or 12-year-olds are a supervisor. And a lot of them, I don't know if it'd be a good idea for them to walk down the park, quite truthfully.
I guess one thing I would ask Ms. Ripley, who's our primary contact with the Ministerial Alliance at this point? Is it Rick McNeely still with Christ Community, or do we? Jerry Hickam. Perhaps it would make sense for you to reach out to Jerry Hickam and just see if he could ask what the churches in the Ministerial Alliance Network are planning on doing, and then make sure that they are aware of the CDC guidance, and encourage them to, if they want, to do something, that it be more of a drive-through experience. And then if we want to reach out to Joe Fry at the Park District and see what kind of thoughts they have about it, certainly collaborations with them are never a bad thing.
I would much rather see a drive-through than a walk-through for the safety of the children.
John?
The other item from the CDC is that Halloween masks are now a substitute for the cloth-type face mask protection, and they also recommend that people not wear a costume mask over a protective mask because that can cause breathing problems. I don't think a Halloween mask is the answer.
Yeah, well, if you have 2 or 3 masks on, it'd be something to see.
But no, I think that's a good idea to reach out to the
Yeah, I can see.
Park District and the Ministerial Alliance and kind of see what they're thinking. But I do think we probably need to adopt something at some point.
And I'm sorry to go back to, but I have seen people going in Carbondale at the different churches whenever they're doing food distribution, and even here in Murphysboro. And the people are orderly, social distancing and wearing masks. So to do it outdoors in the park and recommending the social distance and the use of masks and explaining, that they cannot use custom masks to the people, probably will be healthier than being in a car going through a drive-through, picking up. I know that we are on a pandemic, but everybody is also very conscious about our surrounding. And everybody goes to the stores. And all the kids go to school. So.
Well, I think, the Park District Board also would have a say in whatever ultimately could transpire there, because they are their own entity.
Yeah.
So, I would say that we reach out to the Ministerial Alliance and Joe Fry and see what their feedback might be. But I think that it's important that the city message that those things that Mr. Urvis just said from the CDC are the city's official stance, and that we are coordinating to formulate what we believe would be other acceptable guidelines. And perhaps Bart Haxton with Jackson County Health Department could help us with that, because ultimately I think people trust the local health department and listen to it a little more closely than they do some of the Washington DC agencies. That's my opinion.
Thanks for the discussion. I think we should keep this on the agenda.
Yes.
Next time.
Yeah, we can keep it on the agenda.
Any public comment? Move on to community relations.
Thank you, Mr. Urvis. That takes us to public improvement, chaired by Mike Bastian, who, as we mentioned earlier, is absent this evening. Under public improvement, we have no old business, we have no new business. Is there any public comment on items of public improvement? Will come out of public improvement. That takes us to.
Sorry, well, did you hear anything from Mr. Rawson about the street sidewalk we talked about last meeting?
Mr. Rawson.
About by the Gilbert building, the street and sidewalk?
No, I have not, and I thank you for reminding me of that. I need to, I spoke to him twice this week, and I failed both times to bring it up because I didn't write it down. So I will make a phone call to him tomorrow. That takes us to Public Works, chaired by Mr. Dan Bratton. Dan?
There is no old business, and under new business, consideration of an addendum to the billboard ordinance. I guess I brought this on myself. Sometimes when I don't write stuff down, I forget to include everything. It has nothing to do with that I'm too old to be up here, but anyway. I'm going to request that zoning billboards with 1, 2, or 3 sided. This particular project that we were talking about for the last month has come to a screeching halt. There's not only going to be a billboard put up there. If we pass this ordinance, it was confirmed that the buyer is still going to buy if it passes. But there's also going to be a revenue of taxes because they are going to go ahead and develop that. So I'd like to have a motion to send this request to the Board of Appeals to allow 1, 2, or 3 sided billboards in B2.
I have a question.
Okay?
One of the things that we heard during the initial debate about the amendments to the billboard ordinance were from the residents in the neighborhood directly to the south of where this billboard would be located. I realize those folks are not inside city limits, but they do spend the majority of their tax dollars in Murphysboro. And I know that many of them likely would not, specifically said that they did not want a third side facing that neighborhood as it would, be emanating light onto their residences. So I have been somewhat, I don't know how to say it exactly, surprised that it seems like every time we do what the developer asks us to do, then he's back with some other ask or the project isn't going to happen. And so I feel a little bit like we're being, held hostage by just one more request after one more request. And I just don't know if we want 3-sided billboards all the way up and down New 13 as opposed to 2-sided.
Well, with the way the ordinance is written now, and Mr. Heller's here, correct me if I'm wrong, they can't be any closer than 1,000 feet. And, we ran into this with a lot of other things. Mr. Capias, we've jumped through all kinds of hurdles for him and for the last 3 or 4 years, and we're getting a new hotel and it looks really good. But that's just part of progress, I think. City of Murphysboro can definitely use the revenue. Yeah, we're only going to get $500 a year off of the permit on that sign. We could have for a 1-sided sign so much, for a 2-sided sign so much, and for a 3-sided sign so much if we wanted to. But I think it's good business. I've been on the council for 15 and almost 15 years and 6 months, referring back to the mayor when he brought up what it was when there was a few of us, I think 3 or 4 of us came on the council. We were over $1.5 million in the hole. That wasn't done by just us 3. That was done by looking forward, tightening our belts, and working together as a council and mayor. This is one of the things that I would like to see get done. I've got a couple other things before I retire in April or May, whenever it is, from the city council. But I think it's good business. And I'm going to leave it up to the council for discussion. And Ms. Hughes, could you talk into the mic, because I have a little hard time here.
Did you hear that?
I heard that.
I do have a question, and this is simply a logistics thing. What is a 3-sided billboard? Which way would it go, east and west?
Okay.
North, or would it go
The way this one,
west and
the way
south?
this one's proposed is there'll be a point going toward the highway facing north. One side of the sign would be visible
From the east.
come from the east going to Murphysboro. The other side would be in the opposite, and the other side would be from Country Club. And I can understand some people out there by the Country Club. I mean, how many thousands of dollars did we spend fighting neighbors out there that were not in the city limits to get Walmart? And where would we be today if we didn't have Walmart on the tax? Did that answer your question, Barb?
It answered my question about where the third sign would point.
Okay.
I wasn't quite sure how it would be positioned. I have very, very mixed emotions about this because it seems like we've gone out of our way to help this gentleman that is proposing to develop this, which is wonderful that I know that we need those businesses and it needs to be developed. But I do feel a little bit like, okay, this is what I want. We kind of jumped through hoops, we sent it to the Board of Appeals and zoning and all that, we got that taken care of for him, and now then he's decided he wants something different. So if we do this, are we gonna want 4 sides the next time, or are we gonna want another 3-sided one, 1,000 feet down?
And I'll be glad to clarify that.
I really, really am a little, and I don't know that annoyed is a good word, I think it's more perplexed that we've gone through all this and we thought we were really helping him, and now there's yet another stipulation that he wants.
I think we need to let the blame fall where it's supposed to, and that would be on me. For the failure to point out that it needed to be a 3-sided. I'll take full responsibility for that, and I apologize.
Did he tell you that originally, or do you know?
Pardon?
Did he tell you that originally?
Yes, and I even saw the diagram and the picture showing the sign. So that fault lies on me, and I apologize to the rest of the council. Mr. McComb, let me get you. There was a question down here, maybe it's answered. Alderman McComb?
Well, you know, look how much we've done for that motel down there. And if this guy develops that property out there, we're gonna get a lot more tax dollars out of that property there than we are out of the motel. And we went overboard helping Joe with the motel. I don't know why we don't wanna help this guy. And let him put his sign up. The sign's not gonna be there forever. And if he gets that developed, we're gonna get a lot of tax dollars off of it. I mean, it's not just your fault, Danny, that you forgot that part. That's easy done. You know, I think we ought to go along with the guy and see if he can't get it developed.
I would just say this, I think there is a big difference between a billboard and some promise of some other development and, you know, a $4 million hotel with other developments ultimately come around it. When I first talked to this guy that wanted to put up this sign, he told me on the phone, he said, Mayor, I don't know if you have a city attorney, but it'd probably be a good idea for a little town like yours to get one if you don't, because a billboard like this is something that I've done a lot of, and so you might want to, you know, get your mind wrapped around what you guys are going to do. He's been arrogant from the very beginning, and it's been frustrating to me to have him be looking down his nose all the time and now want to come back with another request. And so it's just, I agree that I hope that corner develops, and I think we can get some revenue off of it, but I think comparing it to the hotel is not a good comparison.
If there's no other comment, I'd be open for a motion on this. Oh, question. Gloria,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I was just going to move forward and make the motion to the Board of Appeals and let them decide if it's
Okay.
suitable or not.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
We're still in discussion, so I'm not sure.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Well, I think if we send this with the recommendation to the board, I don't think they're gonna reject it. So it seems like this is probably the only 3-sided billboard we'd be looking at. I don't believe he's not gonna do it if he only gets a 2-sided billboard.
Well, I mean, I would say that just anybody else that comes along to develop one, of course, will want a 3-sided one because you can make more revenue on a 3-sided than you can a 2-sided, so.
If you have a place to put it.
He's talking about an electronic, like.
Yes, he is.
Flashing, yeah, I mean, I can see the concern on the residents.
I saw a hand on it. Mr. Pearson?
Well, it won't be the only place you can put a 3-sided billboard. You can put one right on William Street on either side. I mean, you could put a lot of them in there, but I'm still in favor of going ahead and letting them take it this way to the Board of Appeals, see what they say. The neighbors doesn't concern me, they've been concerned over, they've showed very little concern over Murphysboro for years. I think we should go ahead and take it to Board of Appeals, let it go through there and bring it back here. Will we have to bring it back here for a vote then? Okay, let's do that, bring it back to a vote. Go from there.
Mr. Shepherd?
Yeah, one thing I might add, I believe that the two sides going east and west are the only digital side. The third side is just a billboard. That's my understanding.
I'm not real clear on that. I don't want to say that after I really, yeah.
Say that again, Harold, I'm sorry.
What Mr. Sheffer said was that it's his understanding the design is that the third side, which I assume would be the southerly facing side, would be a traditional billboard and not a digital light up billboard, which would actually curb most of my concerns because
Curb a lot of money.
I live right across the street from the Carter Tavern, and their big digital sign that glares the time is bright enough. I can only imagine what a 60 by 30 billboard would do.
Mr. Kennedy?
What you're asking to do is change the ordinance to add this to it. It's not going to the Board of Appeals. What we've already passed it to the Board of Appeals. The ordinance allows them to do this. This has to be added to it, because right now when it says two-sided, it has to be put on three-sided.
The question that Dan is raising is send it back to the zoning Board of Appeals in order to recommend to them a change in the B2 district that allows, so we're changing the B2 district ordinance again. We just changed it to allow billboards, and now we're changing it to allow three-sided billboards. So
Yes,
it's still
that's what
got to
I'm
go back to the zoning Board of Appeals.
Yeah, that's what I'm
And
saying.
then
Change
they
the
make
sign.
their findings and recommendations, and then it has to come back to this council, and the council can accept their recommendation, or it can override their recommendation and do whatever it wants to.
So, Ed, what is the motion you're suggesting?
So the motion would be to send a request to the zoning Board of Appeals to consider a further amendment to the zoning ordinance regarding B2 district to allow the special use billboards that have been allowed now in the B2 district to be one, two, or three-sided, as opposed to the billboard ordinance itself, which would cover anywhere in town the billboard was allowed, only allows one and two-sided.
Gina, do you have all that down?
It is recorded.
It is recorded, okay.
Mr. Urbis?
We can compare, Mayor, we can compare that.
Okay.
Could we amend that to specify that only two of the three sides could be electronic?
You know, I've already made one big boo-boo and I've got mud all over my face. I would hate to do that, but now that Harold's brought that up, I know he told me it was going to be a smaller sign, and he basically wanted that to advertise his lot. So, but whether it's going to be digital or not, if I told you one thing, it'd be the opposite, and vice versa. So, I wouldn't have a problem with it, but I'm not going to come back again anymore if I screwed up. So I don't.
Because it seems like even like at Wright's, the third side would be facing residential areas, we probably wouldn't want that to be.
I don't think Wrights can have one. There's already one within 1,000 feet there, though, that intersection. Okay, Mr. Heller's going to prepare this if we get a motion to do this. So I'm open for a motion.
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Campos. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we've got a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I think the ayes have it. You want to count? Roll call count?
Let's do roll call.
Okay, let's have a roll call count, please.
Alderman Hughes. No. Alderman Brown.
Yes.
Alderman Pearson.
Yes.
Alderman McComb.
Yes.
Alderman Urbis.
No.
Alderman Bratton.
Yes.
Bastion. Campos.
Yes.
Alderman Pitt.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there any public comment? If not, we'll come out of Public Works, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bratton. That takes us to Public Safety, chaired by Mr. Russell Brown. Russell?
We don't have anything on the old business, department business. Public comment.
I just wanted to thank the Murphysboro Times for putting the firefighters recognition on the front of the paper that came out today. Appreciated that. High profile in that recognition. That's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Takes the Personnel Committee, chaired by Ms. Barbara Hughes. Barb?
Thank you, Mayor. We have no old business, no new business, and is there any public comment on personnel? Hearing none, Mayor, I think we can come out of that.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes. Under the mayor's report tonight, I have something I want to go over with you. I handed out before the meeting a two-page document, and I will sort of run through this as it is written. Typically, in any one year, the Illinois Department of Transportation, State of Illinois, allocates about $30 million for the Illinois Transportation Enhancement Fund for grant proposals. During this particular year, Illinois has allocated an additional $75 million for a total of $105 million in ITEP grant funds that are available. The window for applying for these is August 21st through November the 2nd, with November the 2nd, of course, being the deadline to apply. As you know, might remember, we spend dues money with the Greater Egypt Regional Planning Commission every year. And one of the groups that they lead is the Southern Illinois Metropolitan Planning Organization. This is an organization that helps to funnel transportation funds to appropriate projects in Carterville and Heron and Marion, and there's a map that extends into Carbondale. Interestingly enough, Murphysboro is not a voting member of SIMPO, but we are in the planning area. Earlier this year, in anticipation of all of this extra money, SIMPO allocated $40,000 to study Murphysboro's downtown in the thought process that we could submit a ITEP application for things like stamped concrete in the parking lanes on Walnut Street, new street lining to replace the concrete poles, and improved turning radiuses at intersections throughout downtown. I say all this to say that essentially if we have any interest in moving forward with this, there is the potential for matching dollars to be needed from 0% to 20%. But you do not know what your match is going to be until the applications are all in. It's the way that I understand it. And so I have been in a lot of meetings about downtown planning and Main Street and comprehensive planning and revitalization and all of these things, and these are all good things and things that have been a real focus of community effort over the last 3 to 4 years in particular, at least with the most recent group that's pushing for it. So I come to the council tonight saying it will not cost us anything to apply for this. Perhaps Mr. Evans would like to speak to it to any degree that he wishes, but do we have the stomach to consider a $400,000 match in the worst case scenario over a 3-year period to do some things that a lot of folks have been pushing for? So that's what I put on the table this evening. Mr. Bratton.
If we apply for this grant and would happen to get it, one of them, we can still decline it at that time, if I understand right, correct?
Mr. Sheffer, I know that you have some familiarity with Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program. Do you have any feedback you can give to that question, just to be sure that I don't speak in error?
Well, I mean, any grant you get, you could turn down. I mean, but typically if you turn one down, then your chances of getting one in the future might be
might be hindered by doing that.
Okay, would this grant just, Mayor, would this just be for what they're showing here?
What I show you in the second page was really only to illustrate what was done by Greater Egypt and Simpo to show the rounded turning radius. Apparently, not a single intersection in Murphysboro is close to what IDOT considers appropriate standards for turning radius, because only small trucks or compact cars can meet one another without hopping the curb, mashing down the curb, and without hitting one another. So when I talked about improved turning radiuses, I put that there. The very dark areas that are sort of in parentheses on that map are the current parking areas, which, this grant application contemplates being a more ornate stamped concrete, which would look like brick. And you can even also see, I didn't highlight them, small little black, what I call hash marks, which indicate new street lighting poles, which would both provide lighting to the street and also to pedestrian sidewalk traffic.
Well, I mean, the lights look great, but I'm just wondering how much money we're gonna have to spend buying property to get the amount of radius on that. We just I've heard more comments and compliments on our Walnut Street blacktop.
That's great.
And, but the lighting is something that would probably make it a lot more efficient and look good. Well, I guess I'm trying to find out is, can this money only be used for the radiuses and the street lighting, or are there other?
Well, the things that ITEP money can be used for are limited. I should have put here exactly what those things were. The interesting thing about street lighting is ITEP money cannot be specifically used just for standalone street lighting projects. It has to be done in conjunction with some other transportation-related expenditure. So one kind of has to be done with the other.
Kind of the same thing with sidewalks also. And sidewalks, you can't do a sidewalk program on Walnut Street, but you could in conjunction with other highway work.
Right.
Okay.
And I think this would all be technically state of Illinois right-of-way that they would be working in on the improved turning radiuses. So I don't believe there would be any, it would just be an intergovernmental agreement between the city and the state if they were to want to, cut back on the sidewalk a little bit or something.
And how would that affect, according to the diagram, how would that affect our stoplights?
I'm not sure.
I guess I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. I'm all for free money or grant money. Don't get me wrong on that.
Sure.
I think everybody realizes that, but is that something that having to move, you think, Harold? I know you don't know for sure.
I would not think so. Just increasing the radiuses, I don't see how that would have a problem.
You don't think we'd have to move them then? Okay.
Ms. Campos?
Thank you.
Thank you. My question is a little bit on the practical department. We can apply for, I like the ideas, they're wonderful. How much this will cost to, have it done, and then
The
you will
engineering
have to come
costs.
up with the amount of money to match the fund.
So are you asking what the total cost would be to the city?
What will be the ballpark? Because I see that we can apply anything over $250,000. So we'll need to complete this project an amount of $1 million, $2 million, and then the city will have to, basically that's
Honestly,
what I'm trying to go.
applying for the $2 million, it doesn't take very long when you start pouring concrete, cutting curbs, putting up street lighting, you go through $2 million. So to do more than just a couple of blocks, I would think we would at least want to, if we were going to have any significant impact, authorize moving forward with the $1 million grant application. As Harold said, we could certainly turn it down if we wanted to. We don't know what the consequences of that are long term. But
No, I think if we apply for it, let's go. It is like to complete the project, we need a minimum of $1 million, because $250 can take us anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, so $1 million, $2 million, and do we, can we have the matching funds? as
Do
a
we
city?
have the matching funds?
Uh-huh.
Well, I don't know, Scott, we received that, what was it, $300,000? Sandra, we were talking about it earlier today. What was that?
The rebuild out of our fuel.
The rebuild, I don't know if, that would be something we could use or not.
Yeah, there's very, very strict limitations on that money. But
Okay.
I can check and see if it can be used. I know we were looking at using it for, 7th Street.
Sure.
As your match.
Ms. Hughes?
If you applied for a $2 million one, would you be considered for a lesser one, or you only considered for what you applied for?
That's a good question.
If you apply for the 200, and they say, this community it doesn't warrant, it doesn't, they won't award it to this community because some reason. Will they go down, or do you have to just put in an amount and say, we either get it or we don't?
I don't know the answer to that question. I assume that what could happen is that they could award certain aspects and not others. They could
So
say,
they could, if you did ask for $2 million, they perhaps would give you a lesser amount.
I think it's certainly possible, as well within their power to do so.
I would hate to apply for $1 million or $2 million and be rejected because we didn't fit that category, for example. And so, I'm all for free money. And the thing is, the matching money could be paid over a 3-year period,
Right.
which would be of help.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to, if we got the $2 million, which I have some doubt about, but that $400,000 would be divided over 3 years. The match.
Let's go for 2 million.
Mr. Pittman?
Is this area you have in the map, is this the only area we're talking about with this, or are we talking about?
No, that isn't the only
Just an example.
area we're talking about. It was just used mostly as an illustration of what I thought there might be a need to illustrate on paper what it was I was talking about these specific things.
It doesn't necessarily mean this is the area that we would do this.
No, it does not.
Okay, thank you.
So is there a motion to move forward with the grant application in the amount of $2 million?
I would make that motion.
All right,
Second that.
we have a motion from Ms. Hughes. I think I first heard a second or a motion from Mr. Pittman. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I just had one question, why didn't I not do this when they were doing our sidewalks?
It would be nice to know 6 months.
I was thinking that same
Yeah.
thing.
That's what, I'm thinking, who's gonna write the grant?
Different, well, the grant actually has been, there's a group, Chastain and Associates, SIMPO, put out an RFP, and they have allocated $40,000 to this urban planner out of Champaign area to do the work. So really, it is, there'd be no cost in regard to that area in the city either. So, but, all right, I did want to mention something I meant to mention it under Public Works. I know we did receive some money for the potential resurfacing of Shoemaker Drive, and I just don't want us to forget about that. I'm not saying we have to act on it, but I think, as we look at what looks to continue to be decent returns on our financial picture, that we may want to do that project next spring or at some point. I just don't want us to forget about it. And with that, I'll go to council member requests. I'll go to Ms. Hughes.
Nothing, thank you.
Go to Mr. Brown. Mr. Pearson.
Nothing.
Mr. McCollum.
Nothing.
Clerk Hunsaker. Mr. Urvis.
Yeah, I did have a question. I had certain people ask me about the status of the sidewalk replacements. We had people walking all over the city saying what sidewalks were bad and such. And I've only seen work done on commercial and more by,
We've had a lot in the historic preservation area that they've done.
yeah, I mean, I've gone all around the city, but I know there's lots of bad sidewalks still.
And they poured some more down there today.
I guess I just never saw a report of what was gonna be done, and just kinda curious.
Well, the walkability evaluation was what drove the sidewalks that were done, and I can get you a copy of that. I don't know, Mr. Mills, can you provide us any update on where the sidewalk pouring and Mr. Wilcox stands?
Yes, on Oak Street, I believe he has 16th to 17th Street on the north and south sides to do, one being the exposed aggregate. And after that, he's gonna go to 14th Street from Gartside to Illinois Avenue on the east side. And then there's a short piece of, on Walnut Street, across from where the old Neil Tire been, it's about 30 feet. So he's well over halfway, I would say, probably more like about 65% complete so far.
And Darren, do you happen to have the list of what has been completed and what's going to be completed by him available to you?
I don't with me, but I can tell you off the top of my head, it was from 8th to 9th Street on Maple on the south side, from 15th Street to 17th Street.
I don't necessarily,
Okay.
if you could just send those to me so that I can forward them on, or send them directly to Alderman Urban, I think is a fair question, just to keep an update on what's getting done.
I'd like to see that also.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, maybe we all should get it.
If you wanted to send it to me and I can send it to the entire council, I'd really appreciate it. I may already have it, but you may be able to get it quicker than I can find it.
I got my copy from Sandra whenever I first started. That's probably a better bet.
Everything connects back to Ms. Ripley.
Thank you. Thank you, I would like to see that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, John. Mr. Bratton?
I have nothing.
Ms. Campos?
Yeah, now that we're writing wish list, I would like to somehow keep 15th Street on the repair wish list. That thing is, it's terrible. I think it's the worst street in Murphysboro.
Talk about a mill out and resurface.
Whatever you feel, your good heart feels like, but that thing is the worst one in Murphysboro. The whole thing, from Walnut to Gartside, it's almost like, woo.
You should go
Well,
south from there, it's even worse.
It's getting like, oh, holy spirit. So really, we need to do something about it.
It does get an awful lot of bus traffic, and it is not in very good shape. I don't know if it's the worst one in town,
It is.
but I'll take your word for it. I trust you then. But it definitely is in bad shape.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campos. Mr. Pittman?
I have nothing.
All right. That takes us to department head requests. Chief Ellemeyer?
Congratulations, Sergeant Webb, on this one.
Definitely. Congratulations, Sergeant Webb. Chief McBride?
Nothing, sir.
Ms. Volley?
Nothing.
Mr. Kennedy?
Nothing.
Mr. Lee?
I want to say that the hotel water main project is completed, we're in the sampling process, so hopefully those samples will come back good soon, and new man in Murphysboro.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. And I did send out an email. If any of the members of the council want to tour the hotel under construction, they're welcome to do so. Just reach out to me, and I can get you in touch with Greg Helton, who's the project foreman, supervisor, and happy to show you around. It is kind of interesting to see.
I enjoyed the pictures there, thank you.
Yeah, and I sent out some pictures as well. So anyway, feel welcome to reach out to me if you're interested in that. Mr. Sheffer?
Nothing.
Mr. Mills?
Nothing.
Mr. Evans?
Yes, can I get a copy of the ITEP document that you passed out?
Yes.
I haven't seen that yet.
I can certainly have got an extra one here for you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Ms. Ridley?
Nothing.
Attorney Heller?
Nothing.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.